Thank you.
Take no problem. Next urgent question, Preet. Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To ask the Secretary of State to make a statement on the national incident in response to the recent surge of rise in measles care.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can I thank the Honourable Lady for Birmingham Edgbaston for giving me the chance to update the House on this important matter, further to the written ministerial statement which we will be publishing and laying later on today. Mr Speaker, the UK Health Security Agency announced last week that it has declared a national standard incident in response to an increase in confirmed measles cases. For our MMR vaccine to be working, the WHO recommends at least a 95% coverage to maintain population coverage. At the moment, our MMR reach is 89.3% for the first dose at 24 months and 84.5% for the second dose at 5 years. This is not a new issue. This has been a gradual 10-year decline in coverage, ranging from a number of factors, from the Wakefield generation, when Dr. Andrew Wakefield had his discredited paper on the risks of MMR, through to COVID with missing routine vaccinations and a drop since then. Also concerns in particular communities such as the Jewish and Muslim communities over the type of vaccine used. And we have not been waiting, Mr Speaker. The NHS carried out a catch-up effort over the last 12 months, proactively contacting parents and carers of unvaccinated children aged 5 and younger. And we have seen a 10% increase in vaccination compared to the previous year. But that is not enough. NHS figures show almost 3.5 million children under the age of 16 are unprotected and at risk of catching this serious and preventable disease. It is so infectious, Mr Speaker, that one infected child in a classroom can infect up to 9 other unvaccinated children, making it one of the most infectious diseases worldwide. And while for most it will be a mild illness, 1 in 5 children with measles will need to be admitted to hospital for treatment, putting additional pressure on the NHS. And I want to stress, Mr Speaker, this is not just a childhood disease. For adults who haven't been vaccinated, it can also be a serious and potentially life-changing event. So my message to those mums and dads of children that are not vaccinated at the moment is to come forward. We have got a range of measures in place. Letters are going out to unvaccinated parents and children, 1 million across London and the Midlands. We've got extra clinics being set up by GPs. We've got pop-up clinics in schools. We've got vaccine buses targeting communities with low vaccination rates. We held 2 MP briefing sessions, Mr Speaker, on the 12th and the 19th of January, one for the West Midlands, one for London, and today we have sent out information for MPs to help us get the message out to their constituents to come forward. It is not too late. There is no age cap. Anyone who's not had their vaccination can come forward. The first vaccine will provide roughly 92% protection, the second 98% protection. So the message is to come forward and to get vaccinated.
Yeah. Preet.
Mr Speaker, for granting this urgent question. The declaration of a national incident due to the rise in measles cases by the UK Health Security Agency on Friday is concerning. Measles can be very serious and it is extremely infectious, with a reproduction of 5 times the rate of COVID. However, it is also entirely preventable. The Minister is entirely right to emphasise the importance of getting vaccinated. The MMR vaccine is safe, it is effective, and it is the best way to protect yourself and your loved ones against measles. There is no age cut-off for getting your MMR vaccine. There are alternatives available for those who don't touch pork products, and once you've got it, the vaccine can give you protection within 2 weeks. I'd urge anyone watching this who hasn't been vaccinated to contact their GP. Mr Speaker, we are in agreement that this issue is serious, and I thank the Minister for outlining some of the steps she is taking. However, we should never have gotten to this point. The UK was deemed by the WHO to have eradicated measles just 5 years ago. Yet since then, MMR vaccination rates have plummeted, leaving tens of thousands of children completely unprotected, meaning that now 1 in 5 children are not protected with 2 doses by the age of 5. Cases have also risen consistently in years and by 120% in the last year alone. So the warning signs could have been seen from space. What steps is she and fellow ministers taking to grip this crisis before it becomes a national outbreak? And how is she planning to rectify her department's failure to maintain child vaccination rates for contagious diseases? And is this not another instance of government complacency when it comes to protecting our children's health? For the record, Mr Speaker, my team actually attended a briefing with the Minister, as she referred, and officials on this issue on the 12th of January. I requested some more information and communications material that I could use in my capacity as a local MP, given the rise in cases in Birmingham. Mr Speaker, it took until this morning to be sent that information, some 10 days later, and only after a national incident has been declared. Has the government been asleep? Have no lessons been learned from the pandemic, that with highly transmissible diseases, the sooner you act, the better? Mr Speaker, we saw how much children suffered and lost out during the pandemic. So the re-emergence of serious childhood illnesses that we have a vaccine for and we know how to prevent is unacceptable. When 80 countries across the world are measles-free, it is a badge of shame that this government has lost the UK this status on its watch. Thank you.
Minister.
Well, can I remind the Honourable Lady that health is a devolved matter across the United Kingdom, and when she refers to the United Kingdom's lower MMR vaccination rate, doesn't actually include Wales, where Labour run the health service there. They have also not met the WHO threshold. Neither have Scotland, neither have Northern Ireland, and neither has England. And it's a real shame to play politics with this issue. This is an issue of utmost importance. And as I set out, this government has been working over the last 12 months to get vaccination rates up in England, and we have seen a 10% increase. There are a range of reasons why we are seeing certain parts of the country and communities not coming forward. She touched on the concerns of the Jewish and Muslim community. Because the wide range of MMR vaccines are porcine vaccines. We do have non-porcine vaccines available. Preorix is available not just on request. At the meeting we had with West Midlands MPs, it is being proactively pushed out to communities, and the help of local MPs of getting that message out to communities would be extremely valuable with this. We also know that there's a halal vaccine available. Again, we need to get that message out so people don't have to request it. It should be routinely offered to them. We also are undoing much of the damage for the Wakefield cohort of young adults born in between 1998 and 2004, when Dr. Andrew Wakefield, with his discredited paper on the risks of MMR, did put off a huge cohort of young people coming forward, and they too are eligible for vaccines right now to try and prevent the spread. We also know that COVID disrupted the routine vaccination programmes, and again, this is a key reason why all 4 nations of the United Kingdom are not meeting the WHO recommended coverage. As I have set out, there are letters going out to the unvaccinated parents of unvaccinated children, which has been happening already, because we recognise that rates have been lower than we would wish. There's 1 million that have gone out across London and the West Midlands. Of all parts of the United Kingdom, it is the West Midlands in particular that we are most concerned about, because, just to give it some context, Mr Speaker, last year there was over 209 laboratory-confirmed measles cases in the whole of England. Over 3/4 of these cases were from the West Midlands, predominantly Birmingham and Coventry. And so there is a particular push in the West Midlands, which is why nearly 2 weeks ago we gave a briefing both for local MPs but also with their local directors of public health, who are doing an outstanding job on the coalface, who are rolling out pop-up clinics in schools, who are going out on community buses to reach communities that may struggle to reach traditional routes. GPs are putting on extra clinics as well. But we have to get the message out. It isn't through a lack of vaccine, it isn't through a lack of messaging, but we still have vaccine hesitancy, and we all have a role to play in getting communities to come forward.
Chair of the Select Committee, Steve Brine.
In April last year, sir, the UK Health Security Agency told the Health Committee they were, and I quote, expecting measles to come back, while JCVI told us the threat was very real. Last summer, as the Minister knows, we published a vaccination report as part of our prevention inquiry. We were very pleased to see it answer the recommendation. The NHS England published her vaccination strategy just before Christmas. Can the Minister say more about how she'll inject more urgency into its rollout, and will she commit, as we also asked, to a much more flexible delivery model for vaccinations, including through pharmacy?
Minister.
Yes, absolutely. My honourable friend is absolutely right as chair of the Health Select Committee. That is why we have met both with the West Midland teams but also the London teams to hear from those on the ground what resources they need in order to become more nimble in the vaccine rollout, because the communities that aren't coming forward are the ones that are not engaging with the routine MMR vaccine programme, and so we do need to be more nimble. That is why we are hearing from those vaccinating on the ground about vaccine buses going into communities, pop-up clinics in schools, GPs putting on extra vaccine clinics. There is a list, we know from our data, of those children who are unvaccinated, and that's why over 1 million letters have gone out to those parents to urge them to come forward. But he is right, absolutely using pharmacy and Pharmacy First as a model to make it even easier for people to come forward. But the real barrier to this is people's reluctance to get vaccinated for a variety of reasons, whether it's vaccine fatigue through COVID, whether they miss their routine appointments and find it difficult to come forward for an extra clinic. But that is why we're engaging with local authorities, with the DfE, to try and make it as easy as possible for people to get vaccinated, both children but also, Mr Speaker, adults who've not been vaccinated too.
Abraham.
Mr Speaker, there are clear inequalities in vaccination uptake, including MMR. We know these reflect various socioeconomic inequalities. So what extra support is being given to these areas and places like mine? And why, as the Chair of the Health Select Committee suggests, was the risk assessment of the Health Security Agency seemingly ignored by the government?
Well, I can assure the Honourable Lady it wasn't ignored by the government. That's why over the last 12 months we've been pushing vaccinations to those who've not come forward, to those communities that struggle with vaccination uptake. And that's why we've seen in the last 12 months a 10% increase. But I have said that that is not enough. There are still people that need to come forward for vaccination that haven't. And just to emphasise to people, this is an acute episode of measles outbreak. If someone has their first dose of measles vaccine today, within 2 weeks they will have roughly a 92% immunity. If they then go on to have the second vaccine, they'll have roughly a 98% immunity, and that will last a lifelong vaccine immunity.
Sir Desmond Swin.
Might vaccination rates benefit from a much more generous compensation scheme for the very small numbers of severe adverse reactions?
Minister.
Well, can I just say, Mr Speaker, we do have a vaccine damage payment scheme. It pays a one-off payment of £120,000 and that is accessible for any vaccine which someone takes up. But I have to say, part of the problem that we are seeing is this misleading information about the safety of vaccines. The measles vaccine is safe. It is we were at a point where we had prevented and eliminated vaccines, measles in this country. Most children will be fine with a mild illness, but there will be children. We have had episodes of children with encephalitis, which is a swelling of the brain, Mr Speaker, which will have lifelong consequences. We must move away from this narrative that vaccines aren't safe. The measles vaccines is one of the safest vaccines you can have, and I really don't think that messaging is helpful.
Daisy Cooper.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. During the COVID pandemic, my constituency, St Albans, had one of the highest rates of vaccination. In part, that was because of the work of our GPs and pharmacists, but we were incredibly proactive at recruiting community champions who could have those vital conversations to tackle hesitancy within particular pockets of our community. The Minister has mentioned pop-up clinics and vans, but she hasn't mentioned the role of community champions. Will the Minister be working and supporting Directors of Public Health to recruit those community champions who can have those vital conversations so people can put their questions to people that they know and trust?
Minister.
Yes, the Honourable Lady is right. We did use that during COVID, and we had some particularly effective campaigns for those communities who traditionally don't come forward for vaccinations, and that was by using community leaders, faith leaders and trusted organisations within communities. We are doing that both in the West Midlands and London and across the country. One of the key things that they say to us that is preventing particularly Jewish and Muslim communities from coming forward is the fear about the porcine vaccine. And just to reiterate, we have 2 types of MMR vaccine. Priorix does not contain gelatin and is safe and effective as an MMR vaccine. It's available on request, but also we are pushing out its availability so people aren't having to request it. It's being offered up front. And it's really important that people know we've got sufficient supply of the gelatin-free MMR product, and our faith leaders, community groups, organisations are trying to get that message out to those 2 particular groups.
Make it through.
Mr Speaker, my honourable friend has got a very important message today, because after clean water, vaccines are the most impactful public health measure that we have, and without doubt they save lives. One of the lessons we learnt through the pandemic was the most effective way to reach the hard-to-reach communities is through the faith and the community leaders, and to take the vaccines to those communities, whether it's to the mosques or temples. Will my honourable friend do whatever she can to ensure that we employ the same measures this time, so we take the vaccines to the communities and not expect the communities to go to the vaccines? And will she also consider reaching out to those fantastic vaccinators that we had during the COVID pandemic, who are highly trained to deliver vaccines to all age groups, and so you can pull them on board to get the vaccinations carried out for the MMR as quickly as possible?
Minister.
Yes, my honourable friend is absolutely right. Can I pay tribute to her work that she did during the COVID pandemic in rolling out those vaccine programmes to those community groups, and such an effective reach that we were struggling with previously, and she worked very, very hard on that. That's exactly what we're trying to replicate with this rollout, and we are working both with community groups and faith leaders, but also taking the vaccine out to communities. On the call with the London teams on Friday, they have a vaccine bus that they're taking out to community centres and to faith groups, so that people are not having to book an appointment, they can get the vaccine. But it's really important to say this isn't not just for children. If an adult has not had their vaccine, it's never too late to get the MMR vaccine and protect themselves against measles.
I Bradford.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Does the Minister accept that the reduction in the number of health professionals that support parents has contributed to this reduction in the number of parents presenting their children from MMR vaccine, and that this is one of the lessons we should learn from this situation?
Well, I wouldn't agree with him there. We have plenty of vaccine, and that's one of the messages we want to get out, both the traditional MMR but also of the non-porcine vaccine. We also have plenty of vaccination spaces. So we've got spaces at GP clinics, we've got spaces at pharmacies, the school rollout programme has got spaces, but we still don't have people coming forward. So we really do need the help of all members, the right honourable members here in this place, to get that message out that people should come forward for their MMR vaccine to protect against measles.
Thank
you, Mr Speaker. And every time my 6-year-old comes home coughing, I get a bit scared, because obviously measles is highly contagious, and it's important we get that message out in terms of the way it's passed on in coughs and sneezes and high fevers. And the Minister's outlined a range of areas where they are trying to work to get that message out. But the fact is they are fighting against a system where a number of the hesitancy message is shared in closed groups. Yeah. Groups that are getting that message out to parents and carers who won't come forward. Can the Minister outline what they're trying to do to counter some of that, to give people an informed choice around the vaccine so that they can come forward with their children? Yeah.
Minister.
Yes, absolutely. She is quite right. There is vaccine hesitancy, and that is a key reason why the uptake has dropped so significantly across all groups, but in some groups more than others. That's why NHS England has written out, and UK HSA have written out to over 1 million parents in the West Midlands and in London to highlight the benefits of having the MMR vaccine. And we are seeing that as more cases of measles are breaking out, we are seeing more people coming forward to take up the vaccine, because they're balancing for themselves the risk of having the vaccine, of which is very, very minimal, to the risk of having measles. Any help that honourable members can give, any suggestions they have in their own particular communities of helpful messages, we'd be very willing to hear that.
Thanks, Davis Jones.
Thank you, Mr.
Speaker, the Minister is right to point out that one of the reasons for the lack of, for the decline in people coming forward to take up the MMR vaccine is the rise of dis and misinformation into the vaccine, not just online, but sadly also perpetrated in this House. The Online Safety Act does very little to tackle online dis and misinformation and to keep people safe. Can I ask the Minister, therefore, what is the purpose of the Government's counter-disinformation unit? Why is there no transparency on what this unit is supposedly doing? And when will the Government actually stand up to the social media platforms, stop them from proliferating this dis and misinformation, and actually stop them from profiting from this, which is causing real-world harm?
Minister.
Well, she does make a point in that what part of the vaccine hesitancy is misinformation about vaccines more generally. That's why we're trying to use the message of immunisation rather than vaccination, because that is a much more positive message. But we are also providing positive messages. We've provided social media graphics for communities and for members of this House to roll out, so we can counter some of that information. And it's really important that we get that message out. There is a problem with misinformation, and just to reiterate that measles is a highly infectious disease. It can be eliminated just by vaccination alone.
Inshallah.
Mr. Speaker, can I thank the Minister very much for her positive response in relation to that. I can recall, Mr. Speaker, you and I have a similar vintage. Recall getting my measles vaccination at school, Ballywater Primary School, in the early 60s, not yesterday, by the way, so it's a long, long time ago. But there was a system where it happened at schools, and I think that's the place where it should happen. However, the Northern Ireland Audit Office report that the number of preschool vaccinations has already been steadily declining. It has shown that the rate of children getting the MMR vaccine at 2 years of age has fallen from 96% in 2012 down to 90% in 2022, quite a significant drop in Northern Ireland with a population of 1.95 million. There's clearly a crisis emerging not just in England but across the whole of the United Kingdom, in particular Northern Ireland. Does the Minister agree that it would be helpful for a joint approach across the whole of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland to ensure that children are vaccinated and, more importantly, protected against this awful disease? It's always better to do it together, Minister. That's what I'm suggesting.
That was the adjournment on measles, Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The honourable gentleman is absolutely right, and I really do want to work with all four corners of the United Kingdom, because none of us are meeting the WHO coverage for MMR. Northern Ireland has got similar rates of 89% as to England. I think a joined-up approach, so across the United Kingdom we have a better coverage for MMR, and so we can get back on top of measles breakouts and eradicate it once again, would be very welcome.
Right, that completes. A point of order, Alexander Staff.